Hi, I'm Leonie West from Westalee Design, and I'm going to show you our Spin-e-fex number 4. This is our miniature version. We have two different sizes, 1.5 inch, 2.5 inches, which means they complete a circle that measures 2.5 inch and 1.5 inches. I have marked reference lines on my block. I have put 8 reference lines in. We're going to sew the larger one first, bringing up our threads at the centre, and we're going to align our reference lines as we go with the reference lines that we have drawn on our fabric. This one has a narrow centre and a wide top, and it does give you a really pretty shape. So we'll just sew the first one. Turn the template down to the bottom. Make sure our reference lines are in place. And sew the next one. Great thing about these little tools is they really are quick to sew. We could stop here and have 4 petals. We're going to do 8. So we'll just keep working our way around until those 8 petals are complete. I'm working the 90-degree angles or 45-degree angles first, working one side, then sewing the opposite side. And if you notice, I haven't moved my fabric. My fabric is in the position we started in, and that makes it much easier when we are working on a large quilt. We do not want to be turning an 84-inch quilt, even a 60-inch quilt constantly to be doing our quilting. If we can create the pattern, and that one's finished, if we can create that pattern by keeping the fabric in one position and just rotating the template, it is so much easier to do a larger project. I'm going to sew the next one on 8 points, but I'm going to use the flat portion of the template going into the center, which means the point will be coming to the outer edge. This is a very pretty template to use as a leaf if you're looking for a leaf shape that you want to add to a design. This also does do a beautiful pattern just by doing 2 of these and continuing them up a sashing. So if you have a narrow sashing, a 1 inch or so sashing, just that first 2 that I just did does look wonderful on sashing. Again, we do not have to move our fabric around in a circle to create these designs. I'm going to stop here because there's a really pretty pattern that developed in the center. This is the pattern I was saying is a really pretty pattern that has developed in the center. That is where it's crossing over. So there are 2 ways of using it, and this is the 2.5 inch size. For this one, I'm going to use the small 1.5 inch first. I'm sewing it on 8 points, but I'm only going to use the diagonal lines. Make sure you line up those reference lines to begin, and we're going to sew the small one, then we're going to change the template over for the 2.5 inch template, and we're going to sew it over the top of the first one. When you're sewing little shapes, it is important to remember that you probably want to make your stitches a little bit smaller, because if your stitches are a bit larger, you're going to lose definition. Because if you sewed a circle or a hexagon, we're just going to pull the key out of here, and if you sewed a circle or a hexagon and it was only a 1/4 inch circle and you used a stitch that was around 1/8 of an inch in length, you would actually wind up with an octagon instead of a circle, or a hexagon instead of a little tiny circle. So remember that when you're working in smaller shapes, we've changed it over to the 2.5, and we're going to line it up and sew this over the top of the first one. So remember, when you're doing smaller things, bring your stitches down in size. And that's either by moving a little bit faster or just upping the speed of the machine, just a fraction. But you'll work out that balance. The more small things you do, you'll figure out what that stitch length needs to be. You just don't want great big stitches because you'll lose the definition. And we only have one more to go. And that's done. For this block we're going to use 8-point reference lines, but we're going to bring it out from the centre 1/4 of an inch. This line here is 1/4 of an inch, so if we move the template up to here, we've moved up 1/4 inch. Also, our foot measures 1/4 of an inch to the needle. So we're going to start at the centre, but we're going to stitch up the line that we marked in there 1/4 of an inch. So when my foot is touching the line that runs across, I've moved 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to line my centre reference lines up and stitch my Spin-e-fex. This will make it larger than 2.5 inches because we're adding 1/4 inch at the centre. We're now going to sew down that centre line, and we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch down. Stop here, turn the template. I'm going to make sure my foot's in the correct position and here is on the right place. So instead of having my centre being made by my Spin-e-fex template, my centre is going to be made out of straight lines. So we're now going to sew back down to the centre. I'm going to move over to the side. I'm going to stitch across. Remember, when my foot touches the edge of the stitch line here, I've done 1/4 of an inch. Bring my template up and we're going to go over. Come back to the centre. We're going to stitch down that little 1/4 inch line again. It's a good way to learn how to do a little straight backtrack doing this. We're going to stitch across that 1/4 inch again. The foot's telling us it's 1/4 inch. Bring it up, line that one up, and up the top. So when I finish this one, I'll go back into the centre, stop at the centre, and I'm going to change the template. So again, we're going to stitch up the 1/4, line up our reference lines, and we're going to put a baby in here. Stop here, stitch down a 1/4 inch. This could be a 1/2 inch, it could be whatever you like. If I was doing a larger measurement than a 1/4 inch, I would probably bring out my outer rim template and mark those points I want to come out to. 1/4 inch is very easy to gauge because the foot is 1/4 inch from the needle. Back to the centre. We're going to stitch out again. And we've got one left to go. So we're going straight up on that line that we drew. Foot's touching the centre. Make sure our reference line is in place. And that's a nice way to combine the two different sizes. Back down to the centre. And we're done. So this is 4 different ways to use our Spin-e-fex number 4 template. 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, 1 on 8 points, 1 on 4, 1 with the flat surface to the outer edge and 1 with the flat going to the middle, using 2 different sizes where we've made them go over the top, the second larger one go over the top of the small one, and then we've changed the size of the overall size by adding 1/4 inch in the middle and using both the 1.5 inch and the 2.5 inch. So I hope you have fun playing with the Spin-e-fex mini series.